Thank you very much, Damien. Wow, standing room only. Thank you. I'm extremely honoured. I look around the room. It's a small room. Yeah. So yeah, that's true. Yeah. Could have been Bo Maris. It wouldn't have looked so good, would it? But thank you for giving me a half hour of your time. Obviously, I've got to sort of rattle through this. We're a little bit late because there was a technical fail on the previous session. But thank you for your time. Hopefully, it'll be useful. I gave you that bio, and I can't believe I used the word passionate, because everybody's passionate about everything these days, and it really pisses me off. It's, it's whatever program you watch, everybody's passionate about everything. Nobody just does anything anymore. So yes, I'm MD of Jackson's, which is a little classic IFA practice all the way down in Penzance in the far southwest. That's my day job. That pays the bills. Meaningful money is something I decided to do because I realized one day that I didn't want to spend my entire career helping rich people get richer, that there was more to my life than that. I would never impose those values on anybody else, but that was just me. I also occasionally blog on my own site. So this is how to create compelling online content, and there is not a cat in hell's chance that we're going to do justice to this in half an hour, but I should do my very best, okay? This is not why. It's not why to do compelling online content. You'll get that on Wednesday morning if you happen to come into my session then. This is how to do it as far as we can do justice to this subject. Abby, why are you in here? You don't need to hear this. You have some decisions to make. Before you embark on the process of creating online content, some decisions to make. 3 primarily. First is to decide on your medium. There are, broadly speaking, 3 types of online content. The first is a written blog, which is essentially a bunch of short articles in reverse time order on a website. The second is a podcast. Anybody not know what? No, if I won't ask it that way because it's embarrassing. I'll just say. A podcast is they used to call it internet radio. It's an audio program, maybe a recording of a conversation or just somebody talking into a microphone and recording it and producing content that way. The third is video, is my medium of choice, at least at the moment. So you need to sort of think about which of these you might be best suited for. Now, it depends. If you have, a face which might not look good on video, then perhaps podcasting is for you. Or if you, face for radio. If you can't write, then we can all talk for a living. So maybe podcasting would be perfect for you. So pick whichever medium suits your particular sort of natural tendencies. Once you've decided on your medium, you need to decide on your audience. So is it prospective clients and existing clients? Is it perhaps professionals you want to work with? Or is it your particular niche? Maybe it's more than just clients, maybe it's doctors or accountants or whatever. Is Paul Gorman in the room? Is Paul Gorman here? Anybody know? No, he's gone to another session. Sorry? He's gone to another session, so I'll forgive him because he's very good at this. He has a site for family lawyers. So that's a good example of professionals, but also sort of niche professionals. So decide on your medium, decide on your audience, and then decide on your subject. Now, that will, to a large extent, probably be dictated by the previous 2, but the best thing you can speak about, or write about, or film yourself talking about is whatever your passion is. That word again. But if you are not passionate about your subject, it's just evident in whatever medium you're using. So choose something that you can get excited about, because you're going to need to do this for a long time in order to have any benefit from it at all. So if you're going to get bored quickly, it's probably not the subject that you should be talking about. Obviously, you need to know what you're talking about. Fortunately, I talk about really simple financial planning stuff. Right? Any one of us in this room could talk about that. But you need to know what you're on about, otherwise you'll be found out fairly quickly. And again, it needs to be something that you can stay focused on. Pick one broad subject. Not too narrowly defined, but what you don't want to do is begin talking about family law, say, and then sort of veer off and start talking about chiropody or something. Stay within your subject. So those 3 decisions made on your medium, your audience, and your content, we need to crack on with some practicalities. So the first thing you must do is to see if you can write down, brainstorm, whatever, 50 subjects. 50 sounds like a lot. If you can't choose 50, you have chosen the wrong subject. I was in February 2010 in a really, really dull seminar. I hope the people that put the seminar on are not ever seeing this video. It's being recorded, by the way. But we were there. We were there because it was being put on by our accountants in Cornwall. And we were there because we arranged for 7 AM to speak at this. It was a seminar for charity owners, not owners, you know what I mean? People who are in control of charity. So we're talking about investment and tax and stuff like that. It was without question the most tedious 3 hours of my life. But I sat down, and in half an hour I wrote down the first 75 videos that I ended up doing effortlessly. And I'm now at 250, and I know I get asked the question a lot, are you ever going to run out of stuff to say? 1,000 is easily doable. You could easily choose 1,000 subjects in your passion. Okay, so let's get started. Once you've written down your 50 topics, we need to sort of, I'm going to back up, sorry. 50 might sound a lot, but you mustn't worry too much because there's only so many things to talk about, you might say. But you could, for instance, do exactly what I've done and create a whole bunch of videos on simple financial planning things. I'd be the first one to congratulate you for doing that because your uniqueness will make the way you deliver that content eminently watchable, and people will turn up and watch it. So don't worry about copying, don't plagiarize, obviously, but I'm sure that you could pick 50 things to talk about. If you set your mind to it. You need to be able to answer yes to 2 questions primarily. Firstly, can you generate enough high quality content on a regular basis? Keyword is regular there. And will that content attract a loyal and growing audience? So can you generate enough high quality content on a regular basis? And will that content attract a loyal and growing audience? Ask yourself those 2 questions. And don't be too hard on yourself, because people will show up if you produce good stuff. So assuming you've answered yes to those 2 questions, write your first post, or write down the subject for your first video perhaps. Maybe even shoot your first video. I didn't tell a soul what I was doing until I'd done 10. And even then, the first person I told wasn't my wife, it was Richard Allen. Who is, sorry, hi Richard. Richard is my sort of go-to person for, do you think I'm a complete moron, am I onto something here or whatever, and he's always very gracious and very truthful. I thought my wife would think I was an idiot, frankly, so, but she didn't. So, but write your first one. Now the first thing, whatever your first post is, or your first podcast episode, or your first video, the most thing you must not do is say how often you are going to post. So don't write a blog post saying, I'm going to be writing 3 times a week. It's just a kiss of death, okay? We've all been, I've done it 3 times. I've started 3 blogs before Meaningful Money and written twice in the first week, twice in the second week, had a week off, written once in the 4th week, and then had 6 weeks off, then written once, and then nothing for 9 months after that. We've all been to websites like that. So don't set yourself up for a fall and say how often you're going to post. Instead, in your first piece of content, however it's formed, say why you've decided to do it. What has driven you to do this? Say a little bit about you, but not too much. It's not about you. State what your aims are for the series. There's no bullet points here because you have to send the slides in about 6 weeks before, and I always think of things after. So, ask for feedback from trusted people, independent people who won't just tell you you're lovely and nice, but people will say, actually, you didn't explain that very well, or the sound quality was awful, or whatever. So just put one out there and then take feedback, tweak it, and then put another one out there and just learn as you go. If you listen to my first ones, my first video was down at Battery Rocks in Penzance on a little wobbly tripod, so the camera's going like this the whole time. You can barely hear what I'm saying. Sounds like I'm in a public toilet, which I wasn't far from one actually, but it doesn't matter because it's the content that matters. But you have to sort of start really, so the message there is to just get on and try. So, content aside, you need to set up where you're going to put this stuff. How are we doing? What am I answer? About 1:45?
Yeah. I'm not going anywhere, Pete.
You know, can't get out. There's no fire.
It's a long way down.
Is that? Probably open that door more for me. So, you need to set up your platform. You're going to have somewhere to publish this stuff to. Now, when we talk about a blog, it's a sort of misunderstood word, really. What a blog is a website where you can update it. Remember back in the day you had a website, you had to pay a web designer to change anything. Well, CMS stands for Content Management System. We probably all understand that now. But there are several of them available. The one that the pros use is WordPress. Now, WordPress comes in 2 flavors. WordPress.com is hosted on WordPress's server, so it's free. But what you can't have is your own domain name. So I couldn't have petematthew.com. Instead, I would have petematthew.wordpress.com. So that's the price of it being free. But otherwise, you get most of the functionality. Most of the functionality of the core WordPress thing. WordPress.org is where you download the WordPress software and put it on your own server, or you pay somebody else to do that, and then the whole world of possibility opens up to you. WordPress, it's still free, but then you have to pay for your own hosting and things like that. But WordPress is the CMS of champions, but there are other ones. Blogger is owned by Google. They've just changed it, and it's got a lot better, a lot prettier recently, better stats and things. That's free. Squarespace is one that most people have not heard of. It's not free. It'll cost you about £6 a month, something like that. But it's the easiest one to design and make look lovely. It's the easiest one to use. If you can use a word processor, you can use Squarespace easily. And then there's a couple of others. Tumblr and Posterous. They're kind of social content engines. So a little bit like on Facebook, you would follow other people and what they put on shows up in your feed. Well, Tumblr and Posterous are similar sort of things. So what you can then do is if you see something that somebody else has put on and you like it, you can tumble it and it shows up in your feed. But they're both free, quite limited in terms of their customization and things like that. But you can take your pick from these. You know, try and see which one you best get on with. And just, see how you get on. Once you've chosen your platform, you need to think about some wider things. You know, like design, what's it going to look like? Do you have a brand? You know, if you're going to blog from your company, then you need to plug some of this stuff into your company website, obviously, and talk to your designer, your web designer about that. But you can get custom designs done. You can buy off-the-shelf themes, which are fantastic. So if you just want to do something completely different to your work stuff, like I did, so Meaningful Money has nothing to do with Jackson's really, but you know, you can buy off-the-shelf themes from places like elegantthemes.com. Cost you £50, and they are professionally designed, look superb. Or Woo Themes, WOO themes.com. Really easy to get a fantastic looking website these days. It's well worth spending £3 a year to get your own domain. It's unbelievable how few people do this. What do I mean by domain? It's the www dot name, okay? Imagine most people know that. But it doesn't look professional to have, you know, yourname.wordpress.com or yourname.blogspot.com. Get your domain if at all possible. Once you've done that, you can add the bells and whistles. Things like email sign-up forms and stuff like that, feed burner, social links, you know, LinkedIn links, or Twitter and Facebook and things like that. So, we're plowing through this. Okay, content we've sorted, how are we going to do it, who are we aiming at. We've chosen our medium, things like that. We've built a platform. Now, I just want to give you some stuff to take away, that if you start to do this, to try and make it a little bit easy for you. Because pretty soon you're going to come against the blank screen with the flashing cursor and you're thinking, what on earth am I going to talk about now? Or, you know, in my case, I have my video notes on an iPad just in front of the camera, so I sit down with the iPad to write my one-page notes for the next video and think, well, okay, I've talked about equity release, I've talked about everything. What am I going to talk about now? So sooner or later, you're going to come against that. So hopefully these next few things will help you with that. Now, remember the golden rule. You will not get anywhere unless you post regularly. Okay, I've said it before. It is the golden rule. Now, I put at the top here, if you're going to write a blog, but actually it applies just as much for any kind of content. Give yourself a track to run on, a kind of template, if you like. So if you were writing an article, it might look like this. And actually before that, another example of me thinking about this after I'd submitted the slides, choose your headline first. What is it? You know, headline is just so important. I've got a great book recommendation for you in a minute. The introduction or the lead paragraph is the thing that will hook people after the headline. So important. What's that going to look like? It needs to be 3-4 sentences at most. It needs to hook people in. Choose a relevant photograph. This is if you're writing a blog. Not crappy clip art. Okay, no excuse for that really in this day and age. Draw perhaps on personal experience. You know, this is the sort of like a tell a story essentially, which will get people's attention and draw them further in. Then the main body of the content, and always, always, always end it with a discussion question. A blog or a podcast or whatever is not a monologue. People won't show up very long if it is. Writing content and then just shutting up is a little bit like having a dinner party and inviting everybody over welcoming them, and then saying not a thing for the rest of the evening, okay? Invite questions and engage in conversation. So give yourself a track to run on. It might look slightly different than this, but this is something you may use for a written blog. Okay, some more pointers. Keep posts short. 500 words, you can get up to 700, 750 occasionally, but keep the shorter, not the shorter the better. Keep it short, right? Use short sentences. Avoid compound sentences at all costs. Okay, you know what I mean by that? Multiple clauses in one sentence, short sentences and short paragraphs. Yeah, put Janet Walford in the room. Really, you know, you don't need. Wow, you don't need to know. Use subheadings. Break up the text on a web page. H2 and H3 are HTML codes. It simply means if you have a post, the title is H1, heading 1. The first subheading and headings on that level are H2. Sub-subheadings are H3 and H4 and H5. What that does is it gives, not only does it make the page scannable, which is fantastic for your readers, the search engines like it too. It gives sort of a shape to your copy. So use subheadings. This is again more for written stuff. And use numbers and bullets for the same reasons. It breaks up the content and makes it scannable. Gives people a sense of progress as they go down the page. Okay? Right, this is for when you've got a blank cursor. I've got a list of 12. I should say, by the way, if you go to petematthew.com/IFP2012, the slides are on there, as will be the video and the audio file. So petematthew.com/IFP2012. Here are a list of post ideas. I keep this list to hand for when I am having writer's block or videographer's block, whatever. You could tell a personal story. We've all got stories that we can share, which we might be able to draw a salient point from. You could describe some kind of historical event and draw something from it. You know, maybe the Olympics recently. You know, draw some inspiring point from that about something. You could review something, a book that you've read, a movie you've seen, or some software that you've used. You could comment on a powerful quotation that you've read. Draw something from that. These are just triggers to give you stuff to think about when the well's running dry. Maybe a current news story, you could add your slice to it. I do that on Fridays live at 4 p.m, just the things that have happened in the world of finance and what that means to people. So, you know, that's doesn't take much preparing for really, because there's always something going on, what the markets are doing or what the latest inflation numbers are or whatever. You could do that too. You could report on an interesting conversation you've had. Perhaps you've had a fantastic, inspiring conversation with somebody here at IFP conference. You could report and draw some points from that. You could create a step-by-step guide to something that you use. You know, you might take for granted something that you do every day, but there may well be other people out there who just think that's gold dust. I have a friend who's a graphic designer, and he has on his site a list of the standard markup for when an editor is going through a document. You know, so any journalist will understand that. And it's a sort of guide to it. Well, it's by far and away his most viewed page, because you know, it's something which people might search for, and he often comes up. You could provide a list of resources. Tell you what, this is gold dust. If I had a quid for every time I get asked, you know, what camera I use or what software I use and stuff, so provide that list for people. It is gold dust for people who are looking to emulate what you're doing. You know, a list of books or whatever. Answer a reader's question or a viewer's question. Ask them to send you in questions. You can make an complex task seem simple. Things that you take for granted, you can simplify it for people. You can explain the rationale behind a decision you've made recently. You're getting the idea that when you actually stop and think about it, there's tons of stuff you can talk about. You've just got to have, have the hooks sometimes to get you going. You can write a guide to something popular. Hell, fine. We've got 5 minutes to go. Yeah. Okay, avoid these mistakes. First one is not posting often enough, and the second is posting too often. Sounds counterintuitive, but nobody wants to hear from you 3 times a day, unless you're Mashable or Macrumors or something like that, a big news site. You know, that's very different, of course. Nobody wants to hear from you 3 times a day. 3 times a week is much better. You know, lower frequency, better quality is what you're after. Posts are too long. Remember the 500, 700 word mark, something like that. You know, if I want to read a book, I'll buy one from Amazon. I won't read it on a on a website. It's not comfortable. Really common one, you don't invite engagement, so you don't ask questions or give people a way to respond, and then you don't engage in that conversation. God, there's nothing worse than that. I realize I'm flicking through these, just remember the notes are available. Also, perhaps your content isn't accessible, too high level. Depends on who you're talking to, of course. If you're talking to barristers, then you might be able to pitch it in their field, but for most ordinary people, that's not good enough, really. Poor headlines are a big turn-off. Write this down. Advertising headlines that make you rich. A hideous title in itself, but you're thinking that might sound like a good book. It's by a guy called David Garfinkel. Don't buy the hard copy version. There's a link on the website. But it's basically 20, I think, award-winning headlines, but then applied for different industries. Advertising headlines that make you rich by David Garfinkel. More common mistakes, you're off message, your first paragraph is weak, your post is about you, nobody cares about you. You still with me? I'm going to drop on my back when we're done, I think. Spread the word. Obviously, Twitter and Facecloth are the main ones that people use. LinkedIn, Google Plus, and Pinterest. There's just tons of these. Pick one or two that you enjoy and use them well. Just spread the word. Put excerpts of what your content is and drive people back, but don't spam people. Also, other people's blogs. Whatever it is you're writing or recording about, find other people that are similar and go and engage. Don't go to their websites and say, hey, good post, now check out mine. Just go and add value there. People will follow you back to your site. All those sites are like embassies. If your website is your home base, then these are like embassies, little slices of real estate in a sort of a website which isn't yours, but which you can sort of put your little stamp on. You need to use them to engage with people, and then slowly people will come back. Okay, 4 very, very quick fire pointers. Create a really good about page. If you've got good content, people will read it and think, this guy sounds like he might know what he's talking about. Where do you click first? I'll find out a little bit more about this person. So your about page is arguably the best real estate on your website. Mine has a video, obviously, explaining who I am and why I set up the site. A little bit of words, saying about 3 paragraphs, very short, saying why. Then a list of my top posts, not necessarily the most viewed, but the ones which I think somebody coming to the site for the first time will give them a good start. Then a bit more detailed biography, and then something called a colophon. Colophon, which is a publishing thing. It's an answer to the questions that I always get. What camera do you use? What mic do you use? So have it on there, okay? So that's your about page. Excuse me. If you are writing, make life easy for yourself. Use an offline editor. Because when you're using a blog, you are online. If you're on a train or something, that's not very helpful. So I use an offline editor for writing. I use a Mac. So a program called Mars Edit. Essentially, it's a word processor, but it connects. You press a button, it connects to your website and sends your posts up. Live Writer is the best one for Windows, in my opinion. So that's a useful little thing. Get your images from iStockPhoto.com. It's owned by Getty Images. You pay for them. An alternative to that is to use Flickr.com. And if you search, for a photograph, obviously you can't use anybody's photograph of their kids or whatever to illustrate your point. But in the advanced search, you can limit by images with a Creative Commons license. So those are images which people have allowed to be used publicly. All you have to do is put a sort of a thank you or a link back to the person who posted it in the first place. So use Flickr.com and iStockPhoto. And then finally, just some more resources for you. Michael Hyatt is one of the most read bloggers in the world. He is former CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishers, the largest faith-based publisher in America. Now, Americans, very sort of godly country, as you know, but it's the 7th biggest publisher in the world. So his blog is about leadership and intentional living, and it's fantastic. Really good stuff on productivity as well. He's excellent, so go check him out for how it really is done right. He writes really, really well. Copyblogger.com. If you're learning to write, do written blogs, but even beyond that, when you're learning about keyword research and marketing what you're doing, there's brilliant free tutorials on Copyblogger. Really, really good stuff. There is nobody in our profession doing a podcast consistently well. Podcasting is exploding. The reason why You told me this 2 years ago, and it's still not happened, but it is going to. Do you agree? Podcasting? The reason being, how many iPods and iPhones and MP3 players are there in the world? How many people have a commute of at least 20 minutes in their car to work? How many people have gym memberships? These are all things which, you know, you can't read an article while you're driving, certainly not successfully. You certainly can't watch a video, but you can listen to audio. All I do in the car, I never listen to music anymore. I'm feeding myself with podcasts. Perhaps that says a little something about me, but but you can get fantastic content via podcast, and there is nobody yet in the industry doing this. It's an incredibly rich scene which needs mining. Podcast Answer Man is the man. Just everything you need to know about podcasts, he's the man. This is Gareth, who spoke very briefly, bless him, at the Fringe. He's a web designer. Gareth Thompson of Code Potato. He built my Jackson site, skinned Meaningful Money for me, and hosts all three of them. Without question, the most responsive and helpful tech nerd you've ever met. Fantastic guy. He's just a legend. He doesn't know how good he is, so get him now while it's cheap. Okay? This is the best book on this subject anywhere at the moment. It's only been out about 4 months. Again, it's Michael Hyatt. Platform, Get Noticed in a Noisy World. They've sold out currently, but they are getting more in. You can get them second-hand at ludicrous prices on Amazon. But the Kindle version is available. So it's just dynamite. Step-by-step guide from beginning producing content all the way through to promoting on Twitter and everything. It's just the best book. And that, folks, is that. There's more on Wednesday morning, where I'll be talking a little bit more about why. The theme of the conference is creating trust, inspiring trust. I had my first clients from Meaningful Money come to me. They emailed me out of the blue and they said these words: having seen several of your videos, we feel like we know you and can trust you. Will you work with us? And I went, yes! Fantastic. So Wednesday will be a little bit more about that, how you can do that.
We started 5 minutes late, so happy to have
Yeah,
a few questions.
Q&A by all means. Thank you. Who was that? Thank you.
Kerry.
Pete, you touched on the use of Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
If you're setting up a new blog, how do you know who to send it to other than through those two channels?
How do you know who to?
Yeah. What are you doing with it and who's it going to? Do you have to get a mailing list
Good
or-
question. Well, yeah, you could start there. The best use of social media by far is to listen, not to push, okay? So your best friend is search.twitter.com, or the search box on LinkedIn, or the search box on Facebook. It's my brother. You got me into saying that. Because you can search for your topic. So you could, I have sort of running tweets going for things like IFA and Cornwall. So anybody who mentions those two words in a tweet and a Facebook message or whatever, I get a ping. So, you know, you can use any search term you want in those things. So if you pick a subject, I'll tell you a great example of this. A guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. He wrote a book called Crush It. He's a wine genius, and he started doing, he's my inspiration really. He started shooting videos about wine. Once a day, half an hour, tasted 3 wines, just him and a spit bucket talking about these wines, right? He's now 1 million followers on Twitter. He's an internet legend. But he spent hours and hours and hours searching for Chardonnay, you know, Pinot Grigio or whatever. People tweeting things like, what's the best wine to have with, you know, beef bourguignon or whatever. And he would say, hey, this is fantastic. This is brand new from such and such a, you know, what do they call vineries? Thank you, vineries. Vineyard. You know, try it. It's fantastic. And people go, oh, hey, thanks very much. Try it. And then think, who was that guy? And he just built up his reputation. So use the social networks to listen. Phil Calvert can tell you far more about that than I can. But there's just a whole world out there waiting to hear what you've got to say.
Any more questions?
Just following on, what's
Sure.
that search thing that you have a special search function running, do you?
Yeah, I use Hootsuite for that,
Hootsuite.
which is a kind of like a front. You know what it is? A front-end dashboard which you can post to and listen to Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and all sorts of ones. YouTube as well now. So it's fantastic. There's a free version. I use the paid version. It's about £4 a month.
Very good.
Yeah.
Kind of randomly related. iPhone 5 or Galaxy with Samsung?
iPhone 5 or Galaxy S3? Absolute no-brainer. Have you felt them? You can come and feel my iPhone 5 in a minute. Search for iPhone 5 versus Galaxy S3 drop test on YouTube. There's a guy going and throwing them on the floor. The Galaxy gets mashed. The iPhone 5 is like a rock.
Oh, I got my phones all the time.
Yeah, and me. I'm an Apple nerd though, so you'll never get impartial advice on that from me. Sorry? Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate your time and attention.